Hey Film Buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Stranger Things has just ended, and as I was sitting there watching the series, I started thinking about some of the plot holes that we've gotten from Season 1 to Season 5, and kind of a theory that would fill in those plot holes nicely, and I think the answer to those plot holes being filled comes at the very end of the series, in the last scene that we get. So my theory is that Mike has made up all the supernatural aspects that we see in Stranger Things to get over his grief from his loss of his best friend, and all the cover-ups that we hear, like the fire and the gas leak, were really what happened, and that's just Mike's way of making Hawkin's lab the bad guy for the death of everybody in his life. So my theory goes all the way back to Season 1, when Will's body is pulled out of that quarry. I believe that he was actually dead, and the fake body, blaming it on Hawkin's lab, was a way that Mike coped with that in his storytelling role in the group, and that would explain why none of the townspeople are concerned about a dead body being pulled out of the quarry, and then said dead body coming back to life and going back to Hawkins middle school like nothing ever happened. Barb's death in Season 1, and Bob's death and all the Hawkins lab employees in Season 2 were actually caused by a chemical leak, as reported on by Murray. And that's really what happened. There was no Demogorgon or Demodogs killing everybody. It was just malfeasance on Hawkins' lab causing a chemical leak. I also believe that Billy and all the other residents died in the Starcourt Mall fire as reported, but it was caused by the shady Hawkins Electric Laboratory, and Mike continues to make them the bad guy, and that fits in with his narrative of the supernatural going on in Hawkins. Hopper also died in that fire being a hero, but unfortunately that's where the heroics ends. Season 4 and Season 5 never happened for him. Russia never happened. California never happened. That was all something that Mike made up to cope with the loss of all these people that were close to him. I mean, a huge Russian base under the mall sounds like something out of a kid's imagination, not something that would actually happen even with all the supernatural stuff going on. I mean, it's miles underground, and there's no dirt displacement. I don't know where they're keeping the dirt. They must be shoving it into the upside down. And all these Russians move into town. They have to be staying somewhere. They either are staying underground or they're staying in the town somewhere, and none of the townspeople notice that. Or it was all made up by Mike. No one questions that Hopper has been dead for 6 years and then all of a sudden shows back up in Season 5 and we see is given back his job as chief. No one finds that suspicious, just like they didn't find it suspicious that Will came back to life. It seems like the townspeople are either very neglectful or none of this is really happening. And as for the Russia stuff with Hopper, we see a Demogorgon in Russia, which Hopper fights, but we see in Season 5 that these creatures are able to rip into the upside down at will, essentially, and they never do that to escape from the prison. I mean, maybe there's something keeping them there, but I think that's something that Mike's mind is making up to make it more adventurous, but also give Hopper a reason for being in Russia and being able to help the group. This theory would also explain why the Upside Down is stuck on November 6, 1983. That's because that's the last day of Mike's life, according to him, because that's the day he lost his best friend. And would also kind of describe the inconsistencies with the lights being used as communication throughout the series, because there would be no lights on Joyce's wall on November 6, 1983, and there wouldn't be a light bright in the Upside Down for someone to communicate with either. That sounds more like something a child would make up for a plot convenience or to make his campaign make sense in this world that he's building. And speaking of upside down logic, everything is connected in there through the hive mind, whether it be the Demogorgons or Henry or the Mind Flayer or even the Vines. And none of those creatures come to help Henry or the Mind Flayer in the final battle, which is a little strange to me, unless it's a way for the campaign to continue without losing any of his friends in the process. And Henry could have sent a Demogorgon into those caves to get the kids at any time in his mindscape, but he never does. And again, that seems more like a plot convenience that a kid would make up to keep the people that he cares about safe. So another question is, in this theory, who is 11? And if you follow the logic of the theory, she would never exist. 11 is made up as a link between Mike and his lost friend, and that's how she knew that Will existed.
Will.
In the Upside Down, when she would have logically never seen him because the Demogorgon and Vecna are the ones that kidnapped him, Eleven would have never been in the Upside Down or by the Byers house to see that. So the only way she would know that is if Mike is giving her that knowledge through storytelling. And besides all the mind-blowing things she can do, like flipping vans and jumping incredible distances, she also made it from Chicago to Hawkins, Indiana, which is about 200 miles, by herself without any vehicle transportation, which is incredible. But I guess Joyce and Hopper also made it from Russia to Hawkins within an afternoon, so it seems like the timeline is a little messed up for it to be real life. There are other logical inconsistencies, like places being vacant when an action scene's taking place, like the hospital when the Demodogs are coming, or when the Mind Flayer is ripping through. And Hawkins was the site of a literal apocalypse, with thousands of people being dead, and the sky turning red, and smoke everywhere.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
But in the epilogue, everybody who's close to Mike is still alive. So that tells me that they kind of had plot armor, and not just plot armor for the show, but plot armor because Mike is the one telling the story. And Hawkins in general just goes back to normal after the fissure shuts up. It's like it never happened. Almost like none of the supernatural stuff has happened. And I think the biggest point of evidence for this is at the very end, the very last scene that we get is Mike typing on a typewriter and a book closing saying Stranger Things D&D, meaning to me that Mike made it all up to cope with the loss of a friend and made it into a best-selling D&D novel. Hey guys, that's my theory. Let me know down below what you think. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.